The knock on her door wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was just a visit, a quick hello, a passing moment of courtesy. Yet, that one knock would reopen wounds long scarred over, stir memories buried under years of silence, and lead to a moment that changed everything. When Eleanor Graham opened her door that late autumn afternoon, sunlight poured through the half-drawn curtains, spilling across her frail figure like a soft blessing, and when she saw who stood there, her breath caught. Standing on her porch was Nathan Cole, the man she hadn't seen in 12 years, the man she once called her son-in-law. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the small moments that heal broken hearts, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Let's keep stories of love and compassion alive. Nathan hadn't planned to come. He'd been driving through Maplewood, a quiet town tucked between fields and forests, when he saw the small white house at the end of Birch Lane, the same house where his late wife Leila grew up. Something tugged at him. He hadn't spoken to Eleanor since Lila's funeral, when grief had turned every word into an accusation, every silence into blame. Back then, Eleanor couldn't bear to look at him, and he couldn't bear to stay. So he left, and 12 years passed. Now, at 37, Nathan stood on that same porch again, his hands trembling as he held a small bouquet of daisies, the flowers Lila used to love. His clothes smelled faintly of sawdust from his carpentry shop, his boots dusty from the road. He didn't know what to say, or why he'd even stopped. Maybe he just wanted to see if Eleanor was still there, still alive, still breathing, in a house that once rang with laughter and the piano songs Leila used to play. "Mrs. Graham," he finally said, voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor blinked twice, her thin lips parting in disbelief. Her silver hair was pinned neatly, her cardigan buttoned to the top. "Nathan," she said, the name coming out like a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "I was passing through," he murmured. "Just thought I'd say hello." She looked at him for a long moment, as if measuring the years between them. Then, to his utter surprise, she smiled softly and said, "Why don't you stay a little longer?" Nathan hesitated. Every instinct told him to run, to retreat before old pain returned to the surface. But there was something in her voice, a fragile warmth, a longing that made him step inside. The air smelled of lavender and tea leaves. Family photos lined the walls. Lila as a child on a swing, Lila at her wedding, Lila holding their daughter Sophie. He froze at that one. The picture of Sophie at 3 years old, wearing a tiny yellow dress, giggling in her mother's arms. He hadn't seen her since. After Layla's death, grief had torn their world apart. Nathan's drinking had begun, the nights had grown dark, and Eleanor, grieving her only daughter, had petitioned for custody of Sophie. The court had granted it. Nathan had promised he'd fight, but he hadn't. He was broken. By the time he sobered up, Sophie had started school, and Eleanor had moved away without leaving an address. Now he looked around the house and saw the traces of that little girl. Everywhere paintings, toys, a piano with sheet music half folded. "She's not here," Eleanor said gently, noticing his searching eyes. "Sophie's in college now, studying art. She'll be 20 this December." Nathan's throat tightened. "Art?" he whispered. "She always loved to draw." "Yes," Eleanor replied, pouring him a cup of chamomile tea. "She still does. She has your hands, you know, steady and strong." For a while they sat in silence. The ticking of the old clock filled the air. Outside, leaves danced across the porch in the golden light. Then Eleanor said quietly, "I used to be so angry with you, Nathan. I thought you abandoned her, abandoned me. But now, when I look back, I realize we both lost too much to blame each other." Nathan's eyes burned. "I should have been there," he said hoarsely. "For her, for Sophie. I was just broken," she finished softly. "Yes, I was too." He looked up, and for the first time in years, he saw no judgment in her eyes, only sorrow. Only love. Hours passed as they talked about Lila's laughter, her favorite songs, the way she'd dance barefoot in the kitchen while making pancakes on Sundays. Nathan smiled for the first time that day, remembering how she'd smear flour on his nose just to make him laugh. Eleanor chuckled too, a sound Nathan hadn't heard since Lila's wedding. As afternoon faded into evening, Eleanor opened the window. The scent of autumn leaves drifted in. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small photo album. "I've kept everything," she said. Inside were pictures of Sophie growing up, birthday parties, her first art exhibit, high school graduation. Nathan's hands trembled as he turned the pages. each photograph a lifetime he'd missed. "She asked about you," Eleanor said quietly. "For years. I told her you were trying to find your way. She must hate me," Nathan whispered. "She doesn't," Eleanor said, her voice firm. "She just misses you." Nathan couldn't hold it in anymore. Tears slipped down his face, falling onto the photographs. "I wanted to be better. I wanted to come back, but I didn't know how." Eleanor placed her hand over his. "Then start now," she said. "It's never too late to go home." The room fell silent. Outside, the sky blushed orange and pink. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. Nathan realized how long it had been since he'd let himself feel this peace, forgiveness, belonging. He helped Eleanor bring in the potted plants from the porch, fixed a loose hinge on the kitchen cabinet, and even replaced a flickering bulb in the hallway. She watched quietly, her heart swelling at the sight. Later that night, as they sat by the fire, Eleanor brought out an old wooden box. Inside lay a folded letter, its edges yellowed with time. "Leila wrote this before the accident," she said. "I never had the courage to open it. Maybe you should." Nathan's hands shook as he unfolded it. Leila's handwriting danced across the page, familiar, looping alive. "If you're reading this, it means life has pulled us apart in ways we couldn't foresee. But Nathan, promise me one thing: don't close yourself off. Don't let grief steal the kindness in you. Take care of Sophie. Take care of yourself. And if someday you find your way back to my mother, tell her I love her. Tell her we both do." By the time he reached the last line, Nathan was sobbing silently. Eleanor was crying too, her frail hands trembling as she reached out to touch the paper. The fire crackled softly, casting golden light over their faces, two souls finally finding peace in the ashes of shared pain. That night, Nathan stayed in the guest room, the same one Leila used to sleep in as a girl. He lay awake listening to the sound of crickets and the faint ticking of the clock down the hall. For the first time in years, he prayed. Not for forgiveness, but for another chance to make things right. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window. Eleanor was already in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. When Nathan joined her, she smiled and said, "Sophie comes home next weekend. You should stay." He froze, unsure. Fear and hope twisted inside him. "You think she'd want to see me?" "I know she would," Eleanor said simply. "And even if she doesn't know it yet, she needs to." Nathan stayed. Over the next few days, he helped Eleanor repair the fence, mow the lawn, and repaint the porch. The rhythm of manual work soothed him. Each stroke of the brush felt like erasing another year of distance. In the evenings, they'd sit by the fire and talk about everything: the past, the future, the quiet ways life teaches forgiveness. By Friday, the house looked alive again. Flowers bloomed along the walkway, and the scent of fresh paint mingled with cinnamon bread baking in the oven. When Sophie finally arrived that afternoon, Nathan stood at the window, heart pounding. She stepped out of her car, a young woman now, graceful, confident, with her mother's eyes. Eleanor greeted her first, holding her close. Then Sophie looked toward Nathan, confusion flickering across her face. "Dad?" she whispered, voice trembling. Nathan swallowed hard. "Hey, kiddo." For a long second, she didn't move. Then, without warning, she ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. He held her tight, sobbing into her shoulder. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I missed everything. I missed you." Sophie pulled back just enough to look at him. "You're here now," she said simply. "That's what matters." Eleanor stood by the doorway, tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time since Leila's passing, her house was filled not with silence but with laughter, warmth, and love. That evening, as the three of them sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Nathan whispered, "I only dropped by to say hello." Eleanor smiled, her gaze soft. "And I'm glad you stayed a little longer." The golden light bathed them in peace. A second chance had found its way home. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. It helps us keep creating stories that remind the world that compassion still matters. Special request: drop in the comments if you believe forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds.